Hi there. In the last video for the Razorback, we looked at the actual blades that the machine wields, and we also took a brief look at the array of instruments in the front here. I think I'd like to work a little bit more on these instruments in the front, as I'm still not very happy with how they look. So I was looking at this in the time before I started recording this. And one of the things I noticed is that this is tilted up slightly. And I think in a previous video we did that intentionally, but I'm thinking I might want to change my mind on that. So it should be pretty easy to rotate that back out to 0. And we're probably going to need to move it forward, because I also noticed that some of these, some of this handlebar stuff is actually intersecting and getting in the way. You can see that right there. You know, looking at it, we don't need these stubs where the handlebars used to fix to the machine, so maybe we should start by cutting those off. So if I select my triple tree top component, it's not letting me select it. Cinema 4D does that sometimes with symmetry objects. It forces you to drill down into the actual object and select it manually. Let's see. Yep, this is the object. Okay. So if we use a loop selection in polygon mode, didn't quite get it, so we got to go in there and clean it up manually. So I just want to sort of isolate these faces, and then we can use the fill selection, hold shift, and just fill the spots we missed. Now we can just hit delete, get rid of it. And so this is pretty ugly triangulation right here, but for now I'm going to allow it. So I'm just going to select those, and I'm going to say remove n-gons, and that way I can do a loop selection right there and get rid of it. But it looks like it's too close to the hole for the fork tube, so I'm just going to leave it alone. What I will need to do is sort of fill this hole. So I think MD gives me that option. And once I've filled it, probably want to triangulate it somehow. Well, quadrangulate it rather. So using the knife tool in line mode with visible only, we can just sort of say, okay, that's one face. There's another third. It's nice and clean. And we can do the same thing right here. So it gets tricky right there because of the way this is positioned. So probably need to move this out, clean this up a little bit later. For now, I'd just like to get it to actually be out of our way. Just one more cut. And that's just going to be chopped off for now. Alright, so I wonder how hard it would be to soften this. Let's try that. Using the brush tool in smooth mode, maybe 2% strength, and with a radius of only 3 inches. If we were to smooth this out a little bit, it doesn't seem to be doing what I thought it would, but we can probably come in here by hand, tweak it a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. Maybe slide some of these edges here. It's a nice technique for softening up geometry. It's just slide the edges back and forth, and it medians things. It sort of finds the middle and smooths it out for you, even if that wasn't your intention. I can do the same thing over here. Just use the slide edge tool. Has some very nice unintended consequences. I think we can leave it like that for now. Now, even though we've smoothed that out, this clearance here is a little bit too tight. So I would like to sort of move this LiDAR unit forward, which means this entire bracket needs to be refitted a little bit. So let's square it off by selecting all these points and then scaling this down to 0. It's more of a beefy platform now. And I guess beefy is just slang for thick and substantial. There we go. That looks a lot better. And of course this is the device that'll be able to twist, turn. Looks like it's missing some hierarchy. Sphere should be a child of cylinder. So this would be able to turn and pitch and look in any direction. It's pretty nice. And in a concept sketch I did a while ago, I actually had a design for the blinding apparatus and sort of a laser array. It was purely cosmetic, but they were sort of these arc-shaped arrays of red lights. And even though they would just be cosmetic, I'd really like to add them because they were in my original concept. And these would sit on either side of the instruments up front near the blinding lasers. And I think the way to make those is to start with a cube like this. Actually, let's not use a cube. Let's use a sweep object. I don't use those often enough. Or, you know what? I do want to use a cube because I'd like to demonstrate a cool technique. The technique is basically using a deformer. Deformers aren't used enough, but they're really good for bending things, for one. It's one type of deformer. So, in my original thoughts for this, there would sort of be two strips of lights. Like I said, they were just designed to look like scary red lights for a sketch I did. Let me see if I have that sketch here. And I indeed do have the sketch. It's right here. So this is a page from the Kindle book, and it's got the green blinding lasers with the blades and these red lights. So I think we can create those red lights using some deformers instead of using a sweep. The first thing we'd need to do with this cube is to give it some more segments on the y-axis so we can actually bend it. The second thing is that we create a deformer. I think if you hold down Alt and create a bend deformer, it creates it at the same position, which is nice. So then we can just ungroup it, make the bend a child of the cube. Or even better, group these two items together so that we can bring other objects into the hierarchy. So we just say group. Now we have a cube and we have a bend. So we'd want to size the bend so that it fits the cube roughly. We'd need to increase the height. And then, whoops. Then we should just be able to bend the object like that. So the way I saw these objects being shaped is sort of arcing back like that, and then from the front view going inwards a little bit. So sort of an array of sorts. So it looks like if we move the FLIR proxy a little bit in, then we can probably make that not as aggressively curved. And so this is going to be light array. And we're going to want this in our symmetry grouping. So this is symmetry for the LiDAR. This is symmetry for the arms. This would be our instrument mount. And the rest of our Razorback has its own symmetry. It looks like each thing we give its own symmetry to, so let's continue that convention. Let's take the light array and simply, by holding down Option or Alt, place it in the symmetry object. But the symmetry object will need to be at an X position of 0 so that it evenly mirrors things on the other side. I'm not sure I love how these look. Maybe they bend inwards too much. That looks a bit better. But does the steering still work with this artistic freedom? It looks like it does, at least when they're placed there. Okay. So, on the same vein of artistic license and just sort of placing things wherever, let's place some more instruments on the front here. I'm thinking that even though we have this main orb for the FLIR, we can probably place some additional cylinders. Again, this is just for style. This doesn't really mean anything in the scope of the story or the specs given in the book. I'd just like to see how this looks. So I'm thinking if a machine like this did have multiple sensors, one of them might be right here. Maybe a sensor that accompanies the LiDAR and the FLIR helps detect something, and perhaps we can put an additional companion sensor right below it. This will give us a chance to sort of stagger them. That's always a cool look. Break up the symmetry a little bit, making this one a bit smaller. So the front of the bike is starting to look very instrumentation heavy, which is what we wanted. I fear these may be too thick. Let's make them a bit thinner. Let's check our steering clearance. And it looks like we could probably move them inwards a little bit. Yep. And I think the bend may be too intense. We could even play with having them angled backwards a little bit to begin with. Maybe they need to be lower. Yeah, there we go. That looks a lot better. Now these will have individual red lights, little glowing red lights, like in our sketch. Right there. So we're going to want to preserve that. So if we turn the bend off, we can see what our array looks like normally. It would be cool if we could place lights in there and bend the lights along with the geometry. the best way to do that would probably be to model them straight. So let's try the capsule object. I haven't used this object in ages. I wonder if it has a hemispherical option. So it looks like you can slice it. Not quite. Let's just use a sphere. We can modify it. So let's just create a sphere. We don't need that many segments. 12 should be fine. We can change the orientation of it, I believe. Nope. So we just rotate it. And starting at the base here, we can create a bulb. And in this case, I'm just going to convert it to polygons and delete the rear half of it. And once that's done, we can fill the space that's left behind. And just using Control Drag, extrude it out. So now we have that sort of dome shape that we can use to represent a light. And this might be a cool time to use a MoGraph object to do some duplication. I haven't done that in a while. So if I were to create a linear clone tool, let's see how this works. Nope, that's not what I want. I want a cloner. Nope. I don't use MoGraph very often. I believe it's a matrix. Here we go. So we put our sphere in the matrix. Still no. You're doing it wrong. Let's go back to that linear clone tool. That looked fine. So let's generate clones or instances. Ooh, I like that. So if I generate clones, I get a cloner. That's nice. Or I can just generate instances, which I like as well. Oh, look at that. Okay. Enough playing around with that. Let's just generate some instances. Yes, sir, this is one of those instances where Jamie does not know what he's doing. I clearly need some practice. Let's just do this the old school way. Let's create an instance. Well, you know what? Now I feel silly. I have to figure it out now, right? Because I'm doing it on camera. Let's get a cloner. Maybe if we move the cloner object up here. There we go. The orientation is still off though. Maybe I can fix that with a null. There we go. Yeah, I'd figure it out eventually. Cool, so now we can, let's see, change the number of these, and we can change the endpoint. It's good to not feel useless. So we can just really easily change the number of clones. And it looks like I changed the Z position, so let's fix that. So if we were to go back to our 3D view, we can place these lights. And if we place the cloner in our light array next to our cube, I'm hoping it'll just bend. There we go. And we can now sort of see, does this work, does this not work? Does it look cool, does it look silly? I mean, this may be one of these components that we spend a little bit of time modeling and then we just get rid of it. I'm not sure if I'm gonna like it next time I look at it. But what we can do for now is dress these cylinders up a little bit. So I think 12 segments is too little. Let's put it up to 18 segments. And then we can sort of make it look like a lens. So we can just convert this to an editable object and optimize all the points. Then we can start extruding and scaling. So if I control scale, it creates geometry for me. And then I can control move again, scale this in. We just want a really simple looking lens sort of object for now. And then we can do something similar here. So convert to editable, optimize, scale these in, move them, scale again, move it out to get that convex shape, and then we can bring the center point out just to complete the curve. So it's starting to look like the front of this machine is loaded up with a lot of vision, which is good. So that's a bit of an attempt to make the front of the machine look better. I'm still not sure about these strips along the edges. I kind of like them and kind of hate them at the same time. I mean, we could just chalk it up to infrared illumination, but I guess there are more efficient ways of doing that. I'm just going to keep adjusting them until I see something I like or something I just can't stand anymore. This doesn't look bad. How does it go for clearance? It kind of gets in the way there. Let's see. Needs to be moved out to at least there. That looks kind of cool. So I think we're just about coming up on the 30-minute mark. I should probably start wrapping it up. And so we have these extra lenses. Let's just rename them. And this would be red lights. I'm going to group the lenses. I'm not really sure where they belong. I guess it's probably time to create an instrument group. So let's group the instrument mount object and just call this instruments. Let's put our flare in there, our LiDAR, our other LiDAR, and the red lights and the lenses. So this is now a bunch of our instruments. And then we still have our arms from last time. This would be a nice place to keep working on, considering that they look so evil. And if we were to extend these arms a little bit, sort of unfolding them, did we ever do proper hierarchy for this? So that's a motor. And this is the plate. No, it looks like the blade instance needs to be part of the plate. And the plate needs to be centered on the motor. So what's the easiest way to do that? Probably to make the plate a child of this cylinder. And then move its origin until it's 0 relative to its object coordinate system. That way, when we take it out of hierarchy, it's at the exact same spot. So now if we rotate it, we can spin it around. Easiest way to do that would be from the chord tab. We just change its pitch, and we kind of get the idea of how it looks when it's spinning. And we shortened it, I believe, so that it can spin. Got to be careful of intersection right there, though. That's pretty cool, though. Starting to look really heavy duty. It looks pretty menacing, though, I think. Let's try a quick render, see how it looks. So let's create a floor, sky. It's just going to be quick and dirty. New material, pure white. So let's apply it to the sky and the floor. So if we render this, we just get a regular looking plain old render. But if we turn off automatic lighting and then add a global illumination effect, we can just turn everything down to low for now and just use one bounce. We can get an idea of what this render would look like. It's really nice to have all of the shading and occlusion in these preview renders. Not bad. Well, I think we're going to leave it here, but until next time, see ya.